Member for Daly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And before I start my question to the Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure, I would like to just acknowledge the 100 people or so that attended Parliament House this morning to hand me this petition today, so that it shows the importance to roads in their community. So, Minister, in November sittings last year, I asked your government to confirm its commitment to fully sealing the Port Keats Road between Wadair and Palumpa, a project which is a critical access and safety priority for residents, as well as providing local jobs. At the time, the Chief Minister said on your behalf, "I can get you an answer and it can be on the public record." I'm still waiting for that answer, Minister. Minister, members of the West Daly community have travelled here today to ask that this project, which is largely funded by the federal government, also continues to receive funding support from your government. Minister, will you honour the commitment to fund upgrades to the Port Keats Road?
Minister for Infrastructure and Logistics.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Daly for the question. And I thought I gave an answer to the member for Daly about this back in, I think it was the first sittings in October as well, but I'm here again answering the same question. But, Madam Speaker, less than a year ago, the previous Chief Minister, Eva Lawler, was patting herself on the back for securing federal funding for the Port Keats Road. She bragged that her government would seal the Port Keats Road between Wadair and Palumpa and saying, I quote, "The Lawler Labor government is delivering stronger and safer and more reliable roads for all Territorians," which is at odds from what she said back in 2020 to the then member for Daly, Mr Gary Higgins, that the sealing of the Wadair Road was not a priority for her government. But anyway. And yet there are leaders here from the Wadair community today because the Lawler Labor government did not deliver stronger, safer and more reliable roads. And to them, I say sorry. I say sorry that the Labor government failed you and that your local member has trudged you out here today to find answers for something that he already knows about. Madam Speaker, the former government are trying to rewrite history and are not being truthful with communities like Wadair. The upgrading and sealing of the Port Keats Road has been included in Labor's budget every year since the member for Daly began representing his community in 2021. In 2021, the government had 59.6. In 22, they had 59.9. In 23, they had 60.2. And in 24, they had set aside 60 million. For 4 consecutive years, Madam Speaker, Labor have featured the upgrading and sealing of the Port Keats Road in their shiny, useless budget book.
Please resume your seat. Member for Daly.
Thank you,
the
Madam
Minister
Speaker.
is responding completely in a relevant way. I'm just curious to know what your point of order is.
Madam Speaker, the question is pretty direct. The question is, will you honour the commitment to fund upgrades to the Port Keats Road? He's going on a big spiel. All the community members want to know is, will he honour that funding?
Member for Daly, take your seat. The Minister is answering your question and he's got plenty of time.
I was wondering if I could get my other 15 seconds back, Madam Speaker. That would be great, because I've got a bit to get through. But, Madam Speaker, I think the member for Daly is pretty bold for asking me this question and should be asking himself why he can't front up to his community and tell him why he's failed to get the Port Keats Road sealed when the money's been sitting there for years. And what the member for Daly has forgotten to tell the community of Wadair is that the Commonwealth only gave its permission to release the funds for this project on the 20th of August 2024, 4 days before the NT election. The member for Daly should have known that. And again, what the member for Daly has failed to tell Wadair is that DLI is still in negotiation with the Northern Land Council for access to gravel, layoffs and water along the 47-kilometre route. Madam Speaker, my advice is that the NLC is seeking that the NTG pay for water along that route, a position not agreed to by the previous government nor by this government. Again, the member for Daly knows that. This is work that should have been done by Labor years ago and they failed to do it. But what I can say to for the people from Wadair that are here today, we are meeting with them today to hear their concerns because the Labor government and their local member has dragged their feet and failed to follow through on their promises. To the people of Wadair I say, the CLP government will honour this project And no, the funding has not been pulled, and yes, the CLP government will deliver this project because it's a federally funded program by the Australian government.
We're expecting a number of residents from the Daly region to attend Parliament. Now, around 60 converged on Parliament House yesterday, concerned that plans for a new road had been abandoned under the new CLP government. The local member, Dheran, joined me on the show yesterday and talked about their concerns. He then presented a petition to Parliament, which had been signed by around 600 people. Joining me on the line right now to talk more about this is the Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure, Bill Yan. Good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning, Katie, and good morning to your listeners.
Now, Minister, tell me, what is the situation? Is this road going ahead?
Yeah, it is, and I'm sort of a little bit... I don't know where all this misinformation's been coming from, Katie. Look, when we got into government, we had to look at everything that we're doing. And as you know, with the state of the budget, we've had to look at reprioritising and deferring some projects, and there were some discussions around this section of the Wadeye Road between Palumpa and Port Keats. So yeah, there was some discussion about it, but somehow or other that's now turned into that we're cancelling the funding, and I got no idea where that's come from, Katie, and that's the misinformation that I think has been spread out to the community. But this is federal funding, and we've got a co-commitment with it. But at the end of the day, this has been sitting in the previous Labor infrastructure budget since 2021, and they haven't moved on it. And what's really, really funny, and I thought you'd like to think that the member for Daly, who was in government at the time, would have been aware that the funding was only released by the federal government in August, about 4 days before the election last year. So it couldn't even commence then. So work's only now just started on doing the planning for the road, and we're seeing hold-ups in any case, getting approvals for water and other bits and pieces with Land Council. So it would be years in any case before the project was able to commence. So, I don't know what message is being sent, i.e. from the member for Daly back to the community or vice versa, because...
So, Bill, do you think
it's been quite interesting, I suppose, the last couple of weeks on this.
Do you think he's being a bit tricky or a bit dishonest with the community?
Well, you've got to stop and think, hey, Labor in government for the last 4 years, and all of a sudden they've lost government, and now this thing is an issue. You thought the member would have been fighting for this from day one, but you've got to step it back even further, Katie, because I had a good conversation with Gary Higgins about this a few weeks back. And because this funding came from the coalition before the election back in, I think, 2020. So that was where the commitment came from. And Gary Higgins was up in Parliament here pushing to get government to get that money released, to get that project going back when he was still in Parliament. And Eva Lawler at the time, I believe, was the Minister for Logistics, Infrastructure and Planning. And Gary told me that she stood up in Parliament and actually said that the Wadeye Road was not a priority of her government. So,
well, it wouldn't have been at that time, Bill, because they didn't hold that seat. Labor didn't hold that seat.
Well, it wasn't their member in that seat, Katie, so they obviously didn't particularly care about the people out at Wadeye at that time. But all of a sudden, now it's an issue. It's like,
I guess taking that into account,
away, so it's a problem.
I mean, taking that into account, I guess that's their concern probably now as well. To switch things around, is that maybe what they're thinking is now that there's a CLP government in power, that money is no longer going to see the road delivered.
Yeah, well, we're a little bit bigger than the Labor Party, Katie. I can tell you that, because we've committed to doing that, right? Look, it's federal funding, so I can't just say, no, we're not doing it. I have to get approval from the federal government. I have to be speaking and writing to Catherine King to say that I'm not going to progress it, and she might not be very happy with me if I did that, to be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, if the money's already been earmarked, so how much money is the federal government putting in, and how much does the Northern Territory government need to contribute?
There's 60 mil from the feds, Katie, and 20 million for us for a total of 72. So, and that covers a couple of projects out there. So there's the piece from Palumpa through to it's like the airport there at Wadeye, and then there's also Purgett Street from the airport into the community. So they're two separate parts. I believe the Purgett Street piece is going ahead sooner than the other piece, because we've got to get those approvals from Land Council. They want to charge us for the water, and there's no way in the world, Katie, I'm paying for water to do a road that assists the communities out there. That just doesn't make any sense. And
So
even the previous government weren't going to do that either.
Who wants a payment for water?
Land councils, apparently, that's the advice I'm getting from the department, that the land councils want to be paid for the water used to build the road, because building roads takes a lot of water. And the previous government said they weren't going to pay for the water.
It's a road that's going to benefit everybody out there, like for the people living out there.
Absolutely, Kate. That's part of the importance of this road, because in the wet season, for Wadeye, the only way to get stuff in is via barge onto their barge landing. And, of course, then from there it has to get to Pepperminardi and down to Palumpa. So the road is quite critical. And I think the problem is we met with people from the community yesterday. My staff did. I didn't have time. What they're saying is that, okay, they've been promised this road for years and years. It hasn't been delivered yet. But the previous government then didn't spend any money on the maintenance on the road, so the road's in a pretty bad condition. So we need to have a little bit of a look at that for maintenance grades and to see what that looks like, and at least do that piece of short-term work before we can get onto the main road, because it's going to take a couple of years to do. The advice is it's going to take 2 wet seasons. We can't start this wet season. We can't start this coming dry season because the approvals are not in place yet. So it won't. At the earliest, in any case, it wouldn't start till next dry season in 2026.
So, Bill, who are the approvals? Like, who do you need approval from?
Well, the Land Council, in particularly for access to gravel, access to water, and any of those permits along that road corridor where we may see some movement. So that's done through Land Councils along with ARPA. But the big ones, of course, are water and access to gravel. They're always the key things for doing roads out in the remote areas. So water's key, and, of course, gravel's key. So we need those approvals from Land Council to do those things.
I mean, that certainly makes this a very different story to what it was yesterday when we were speaking to the local member. I mean, he was saying that there was concern that the CLP was not going to let this go ahead. But from what you are saying, and please correct me if I've misheard this, but from what you are saying, the money's there. It's been costed $72 million to happen. You're going to need a couple of wet seasons. It's going to take quite some time. But at this point in time, what is holding things up is you need access and approval from the land councils, and you also need to sort out this water issue because they are wanting payment for water.
Yep, that's right, Katie. It happened down in Central Australia too, so I give Labor one thing at the time. The Land Council wasn't going to supply water to a section of road on the part of the Outback Way, so the government were actually smart and said, well, we won't seal that piece of road past your property. We'll move on and do the next bit. So it sets a precedence, Katie, if we're having to pay for water to build roads, and we certainly can't do that. That water's there for everybody. And we need that water to help build that critical infrastructure right across the territory. But at the end of the day, too, Katie, they're not the Lone Ranger. There's lots of other communities out there across the territory who want roads and need roads too. There's the people in the Sandover region are screaming out. People down my way, right across the territory, in the Arnhem Land region. So we've got to sort of balance how we deliver these projects. We work with the federal government, of course, to deliver them. As you know, we don't have the money. And I think I said yesterday in media, there's 11.6 billion reasons why we're having to reprioritise and defer projects, because we just don't have the money to come out and deliver everything that the record infrastructure spend that the previous Labor government keeps spruiking about. The money's just not there to deliver that stuff.
Well, Bill, keep us up to date with what happens with this road in particular, in terms of those approvals and in terms of an agreement around the water. As you've said, the government's not going to be paying for that water. You don't want to be setting a precedent. But I mean, fundamentally here, we are talking about a road that is going to provide year-round access to the residents living out that way. So I would think that, that they would want that to happen. So please do keep us up up to date. Now, I do just want to ask you about something that's, it may or may not be on your radar at this point in time, but as I understand it, you obviously also oversee transport, and the NT News is reporting this morning that this major global airline wants to launch seasonal flights between Darwin and the Middle East, promising increased passenger numbers and freight options. So Qatar Airways had revealed the intention in a submission to the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. That's according to a report in the paper today. I mean, Bill, it sort of falls under a couple of different portfolios, I suppose, including Robin Carl's and also Marie Claire Boothby's. But from your perspective, should we be doing what we can to facilitate this? I know that the federal government is going to have a big part to play.
Oh, absolutely, Katie. We need to be doing everything we can to get additional airlines into Darwin. And it's sort of, because Qatar is so big and they move quite a lot of freight, so that drops straight in for me into my logistics portfolio. But on the other side, the flip side for tourism and economic development, having Qatar coming into Darwin and providing other options to get over to Europe, because quite a lot of the ports and access to Europe is through some of those Middle Eastern ports, through either Qatar, Dubai, and those other areas. So an additional international airline coming into Darwin is certainly welcome on all fronts, on those freight and logistic fronts, and of course on the tourism and business fronts. So it's certainly a positive, and I think the Minister for Tourism, Business and Asian Relations will be probably leaning on her federal counterparts, and I'm hoping that Marie Claire Boothby is also leaning on her federal counterparts in tourism to push this, and I'll be doing my bit through to the Infrastructure Minister federally again to say, to spruik what the benefits of this will be for the territory. But just in one last thing, Katie, before we finish, we had a really good meeting with the members from the Wide-Eye community yesterday. So my senior advisor and advisor on logistics and infrastructure met with the community members who were here yesterday, and there was a really positive meeting. So we gave them the facts. This is the lay of the land. This is where everything stands currently, and so it was just, these are the actual truths and the facts about the project. So they were very, very happy when they walked away, because they've got a very clear understanding now of where the project is at and where we're going to go. Yeah,
that's really good. And I think that is an important thing, to sit down with people and hear their concerns, and you be able to articulate, what's going on from your side of things. Bill, before I let you go, mate, a couple of minutes late because there was something going on in Parliament. How's it all tracking today?
Yeah, look, busy day today, Katie, where the Chief Minister introduced some amendments to the Police Administration Act so they can actually do drug and alcohol testing on DV offenders who may have DVOs, which is good. Some access for police to deal with people who may be on parole, breached their parole, or have arrest warrants issued in relation to parole, to be able to access the premises but not actually go inside a house, because at the moment they can't. There's just some anomalies there for that. So they weren't supported by the opposition apparently, so that's a bit silly on their part. Anything that we can do to deal with DV and stop offending against people is certainly a positive in my book. So
how come they didn't support
that? It's funny that they voted against that bill proceeding. I don't know, Katie.
All right,
you've got to wonder sometimes.
We'll follow it up. We've got the week that was tomorrow, so no doubt there'll be plenty of discussion about that.
It'll be a huge day, Katie.
It will be. There is, mate, you guys, there has been so much legislation introduced and passed. And, look, I will be going through it all with a fine-tooth comb. But it's, there has been a lot happening this week.
Absolutely. And then, of course, all the things that we gave notice of this week we'll be debating in March. So March things are going to be quite big. I've got the stuff on the debt ceiling. Of course, we've got territory coordinators, that big game-changing piece of legislation for the territory. There's a myriad of things coming up in March, so that will be, I think, a watershed moment around particularly the territory coordinator and that key piece of economic development legislation that's going to turn the territory round. So it's going to be big, and really looking forward to that.
Well, Bill Yan, the Treasurer and also the Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for having a chat to us about that project.
Cheers, Katie. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks so much.